Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Intentional Living Podcast with Marty Keller here in Sacramento and my mentor and friend and colleague, John Donovan in Oceanside, California. Hi, John.
How you doing, Marty?
I'm doing good. I'm enjoying this conversation you and I have been participating in for the past couple of months about the intentional living uh, principles. But before I do that, before we get into that, I just want to let a newcomer know what we're doing here. What is the intentional living practice? What is the intentional living podcast? And in this podcast, we take a look at how we can use the intentional living practice to break patterns of behavior that I say I don't want and nevertheless continue to manifest. Like a couple of examples of how that might show up for us is, have you ever hurt someone you loved and then later regretted it? And then went ahead and hurt them in the exact same way again?
hmm
Or have you ever realized in the middle of an argument with somebody that you were making the wrong argument and you kept to argue it anyway? Or have you ever known that you were about to do or say something that you would regret, maybe even heard a little voice in your head saying, "Don't go there," and yet you found yourself unable or unwilling to stop?
Right.
Well, these are the kinds of the examples of the kinds of behaviors that we're talking about here. And in this podcast, we examine how these things arise in our subconscious. What are they doing there? And learn to, rather than fight them, to befriend them, to make them allies with us in creating the world that we really, in our deepest hearts, our deepest desires as human beings, we want to manifest. And John, you and I have been having this conversation about this practice and our experience with it for almost 6 years now. Our sixth anniversary is coming up in a couple of weeks in May.
Wow.
And so we continue to discover things about ourselves as individuals, and we also continue to discover things about our world that the intentional living practice helps us to see. And so it's been a powerful adventure for me in my life, and I'm always happy that we can share what we're learning with new friends that are listening in.
hmm
Uh, and before I go into any more detail, just to note that while John and I have a conversation about the intentional living practice, and we may share some examples of how it works, how it's worked in our own lives, there's nothing like experiencing it for yourselves. And we do our work in group, similar to, say, a 12-step group. And these we have four group meetings a week that are all on Zoom. And so we invite you to consider joining one of the meetings and be able to ask questions directly, be able to do the practice, some of the practices that we share and talk about here, examine the principles. So information about how to join a group meeting will be at the end of the podcast. So
Yeah.
just know that you're welcome to join and learn for yourself what the heck these two crazy guys are talking about.
Correct.
So we've been talking about our series of principles, axioms that we've developed over the course of the years in doing this work, statements that guide us to understanding and guide us to creating our lives the way we would intend them to. We started out back in the end of last year with the first principle that we've listed called "I'm always getting what I want," and we've gone through I don't know 15, 20 different principles, and we've done a podcast on each of those. And some of them we've even done a couple of podcasts on because they were so chock full of information. And you've noted, I think, John, many times that a lot of these principles are counterintuitive, and that's partly why we take some time to get into them. Like, I'm always getting what I want. What do you mean I'm always getting what I want? Or
Yeah.
the one that we did a couple of weeks ago, nothing's wrong. What do you mean nothing's wrong? How could that be? You guys are wrong.
You guys
Uh,
are on. Yeah.
Last week we looked at the principle that said when I'm defending myself, I'm participating in my own oppression.
hmm
And we've got one more to go, and I'm going to put that up on the share screen for everybody to see. And this is one of the more recent ones that we've just added on in the last couple of weeks. And that's just because I think it, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. So, what does that one mean to you, John? Just because I think it doesn't mean it's true.
I used to make assumptions about people in my perception of what they were doing, and then I would name it like that guy was just rude. So, and I would act as if that were true and respond to it in a way that was in alignment with what I saw. Um, in the 12 step AA, they have this saying, first thought wrong. It's
I
like something
like that.
happens. Yeah, something happens. There's a trigger. My first thought back then was, I want to be here or I want out of here. So that thought led to a behavior because I believe the thought to be true. Now I understand that my perception about what other people do is my assumption about what other people are doing. Because until they tell me, I only have my perception of what's going on to base my facts, what I think. So now I say this, okay, when I heard you say that, whatever that was, this is what I heard you say. And when I check with them, for the most part, we're right on. But there's a lot of times, like, how, John, did you get that from what I just said? I remember one time with this awareness that my arguments with the people I was in a relationship with was you this, you that. How come you? Last time you did, remember 10 years ago? And I got that we were actually underneath all this perception and assumptions. We were screaming at each other, I love you. And the other person would scream in their way what they're thinking about this. I love you back. Like, you did that to me. No, I didn't. Yeah, because the last time we did the same thing, and on this argument goes. But underneath that, it was, I love you, or I need love right now. And I didn't hear that. Um, I didn't see that. That wasn't in my perception because I thought it's about I'm a good, like what I used to say, I'm a good judge of character. Because I judge my character, my beliefs and thoughts, and criticize and doubts and everything ad nauseum. So I was a good judge of my own motivations. Uh, so yeah. Um, Now that I've done the recovery work, addressing the copious amounts of unresolved complex post-traumatic stress that I experienced not only in my childhood, throughout my pre-teens, teens, 20s, I was in the service and I was in Vietnam. And actually going through boot camp is really traumatic too, because you got some big guy like in your face screaming at you, spitting all over you. And you got to like take it. That's traumatic. Having um, resolved that complex post-traumatic stress that was in my subconscious, replacing it with, for example, owning. Last time we talked about liar, I remember the time I took that to the tree as my truth. I'm a liar, and it was like, yeah, oh my God. And then all the times I'd lied when I really didn't have to, just make it up. It was such a relief. It was such I call it a sloughing of heaviness, owning that. And then I intend to be honest, or I intend to hold myself in high regard, addressing that subconscious. Now I find myself engaged in conversation, and I can actually realize I'm not thinking about what I'm going to say. I'm listening, and my intent is to create inclusiveness and to build the capacity to maintain and sustain long-term loving, caring relationships. So I'm bypassing my assumptions and logical thinking into a feeling tone space um, that I'm sharing with somebody else, and find myself not having to like bring up examples of when I didn't do that, or bring up examples of when I did that, but it was because she did. I'm not in a defensive mode, which was the last thing we talked about. Nor am I in an attack mode. I'm in a learning expansive mode where I know this conversation, even though it may be difficult, is an opportunity for me to expand and create cohesiveness with the person I'm talking to. And right now, for me, it's my two daughters, my two adult daughters. I had a conversation with one of them last weekend, and she was talking about something. When I heard her talking, I could feel myself wanting to like defend and say, "Well, wait a minute," and I didn't. I just took a breath and listened all the way through. Um, and at the end, I just said, "Okay, yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying," which is way different than my past behaviors. And all these principles we've been going through, I'm not. We didn't, and I didn't create all these principles. We, as a group, created these principles. We're not creating these principles for you to do. The ones that I created are the ones that I understood about myself, that gave me freedom of movement and expression and connection that I didn't have before I started contemplating these principles. Like the one that pops into my mind is the issue is never the issue. I got an issue with you. Da 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 da. Well, when I focus on that and grab that like a dog with a bone, I'm like I'm like I want to be right. Now I understand that there's something underneath, and um, I I'm teachable. There may be something I'm not aware I'm doing that bothers you. It's, my last time we were in Portland about a month ago, I walked into my daughter's house, and my grandson said, "Hey, Grandpa, why do you always come in the kitchen, fold your arms, and stand there and don't say anything?" And I'm like, "What?" And I looked at my daughter. She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Really? I do that?" It's like I was not aware that I had done that. And then we get home, and his mom's here. We were up there together by ourselves. And I told her, I said, "Solomon says I come in the kitchen, fold my arms, and stand there and don't say anything." She goes, "Yeah, Dad." And I'm like, "Oh, oh my God, really?" I can see that as being intimidating. The father figure comes into the room, folds his arm, and then like watches you. It's like that's intimidating, especially for the child, because they are my kid. So I changed it. So I'm willing to change that. I told my one daughter I'm gonna get me a tutu, and I'm gonna put that on when I come in the kitchen and see what happens. Something different,
I pay money to see that, John.
So, but this is what I'm talking about. Um, just because I think it doesn't make it true, and I want to. The last one, when I'm defending myself, I'm participating in my oppression. So if I'd have said to my grandson, "Really? No, I don't do that. Come on," because I have no memory of me doing that. I really do not. But that's their perception of me, and all the patterns that I created that I've worked on for the last 38 years came from my subconscious. It's like most everybody in my life would be aware of my issue with drinking before I became aware that it became a problem.
Right.
They would say, "Why do you drink so much?" It's a weekend, it's Miller time. Like watch the commercial. It says when you get off work, it's Miller time. So it's Miller. I would not like own it until I got to the point where I quit working. Um, so anyway, that's my that's my spiel.
Yeah, thanks for that. There's so many, as with all of the principles, there's just so many approaches to this. One
Yeah.
thing I wanted just before I share some of the things I jotted down, I wanted to just um, I don't know what I'm trying to come up with the verb, but I want to emphasize what I heard you just say
Okay.
from the perspective, the bigger picture of the accountability practice. And
Right.
that is about knowing ourselves. And I remember when you used to facilitate our men's group, which is how you and I met many years ago. We had a church men's group, and
Hmm.
um, through different networks, we invited you to come and facilitate our little. I think we had 8 or 9 guys, and you used to say early on that the reason you came to these meetings and participated in them is because you wanted to get to know yourself better.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting going, what kind of bullshit is that? You're here to fix us, God bless it. Um, and so
Yeah.
it's just, I had no room in my consciousness for, I'm here to know more about myself. I understand why now, because the wounded child doesn't want to know more, because he's always in, or she is always in defense, as we talked about
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
So that the truth is that just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. Turns
Right.
out to be one of the ways, if I'm willing to explore that as a possible fact, then it's a way that I get to know myself because it it alerts me to pay attention to the things I think that are generally in my subconscious mind, so I'm not paying attention to them. So we have all of these, I have all of these rules that I live by that are kind of like our principles. I've got the
Yeah.
Marty rules and principles that frame what's right and wrong, what's good or bad for me, what's
Mhm.
safe and what's not safe to say in any given situation. And I'm not aware of them unless something happens to cause me to become aware of them. And one of the ways that's one of the more benign ways has been to participate in our group meetings where it's safe to make observations about myself that I might not say in
Yeah.
say, a business professional meeting or something, or even in a church meeting. So
Right. Yep.
I just,
And rightly so. Yeah.
I just wanted to start out by saying that um, to underscore what you were just saying, that the purpose of all of these principles and the purpose of the practices that we use in the intentional living process is to help me get to know about myself. So that whole thing about you walk in the kitchen and fold your arms and say nothing, you didn't know. And
No.
and that little kid who might have been intimidated, your grandkid was actually unintimidated enough to say that to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he may have had his reasons. So rather than going, as you said, getting defensive and saying, no, I don't, or you're exaggerating, or uh, what are you talking about? You were
Right.
open to considering that
Yeah.
this was something you could learn about yourself.
Hmm.
So that also refers back to our principle we talked about several weeks ago, nothing's wrong. You were willing, in order for me to know myself, I have to be willing to look at things without making them right or wrong,
Correct.
just
Oh
making
my
them
God.
a possible
Huge.
fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the first thing I wanted to say about this principle, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. The second principle is like it, and you referenced this when you talked about Miller time. This principle reminds me of the old slogan, as seen on TV. And how many
Oh yeah.
times do people say, I saw it on TV, so it must be true?
Right.
So it's like, I thought it must be true. So again, there's an unspoken belief or assumption in there that can lead us astray because it may not be true. Just because I saw it on TV may not mean it's true.
Right.
And so it took me a long time to develop skepticism about what I hear on TV, or now it's, I saw it on the internet.
Correct.
So I read it in Facebook, so it must be true. Well, actually, I've come to opposite conclusion. If I see it on TV or Facebook, it's probably not true. Um, but either way, it's I've turned it into an invitation for inquiry.
Yes.
So the question that I use as a facilitator in our meetings, oftentimes when people will make comments about themselves, I'll just say, is that really true? Is that really true? Just because you think it might not be. Um,
Mhm.
an example of just because I think it doesn't mean it's true in a practical way. And again, something this you made me think about this in your remarks. Have you ever done this, John? Have you ever been upset with somebody or in a contentious relationship with somebody, and you have a conversation with them in your own head,
Oh my God.
and we script what the other person's saying as if that person's actually in our head, and then
Mhm.
we go back and forth. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have found myself in a conversation with another person who wasn't present.
Correct.
Just
And then
because I
you go
think
through all
it,
the what ifs.
yeah. And so I'm thinking it, and I would like I could create that dialogue, that faux dialogue, that pretend dialogue in my head, and it would feel true because
Yes.
I brought that my complete idea of that person into my head. I mean, it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with that person in reality, but it felt real. So I found that as one of those practical examples of, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. And what made me think about that is a comment that you made, um, which is when I'm making up something in my mind about you, I have no idea if it's true or not unless I ask you.
Right. That's I confirm it with you.
Right. So just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because I think this about you doesn't mean it's true unless
Correct.
I ask and get confirmation or disagreement.
Correct.
So one of the again the things that you taught me as a way to understand and appreciate this is several times in a meeting I might hear you say to someone, "What did you hear me say?" And I use that too as soon as I notice something in the other person's face that may be look puzzled or pissed off or whatever. Say, oh, what did you hear me say?
Yeah.
So that's another way for me to notice, okay, I'm thinking that you're hearing me the way I expect you to hear me.
Correct.
I'm going to check that.
Correct.
What did I hear you say?
And
And the reverse of that, let me finish my thought. The reverse of that is true. So when I'm in a group meeting and I'm commenting on something I heard someone else say, I won't say, John, you said so and so. I will say, John, I heard you say
correct.
so and so. So, first of all, now I'm communicating to you what I heard,
Right.
and then you can set the record straight if what I heard you say is not what you were intending to say.
Yeah.
And now we've got
Yeah.
dialogue going on. We've got relationship.
Correct. And every time I ask, what did you hear me say? And then I stop. Usually I have to wait a minute for people to respond. In their response, it's never what I said.
No.
No, it's never the picture, it's never the concept, the perception that I have that I'm speaking from that they hear. They filter it through their reticular activating system need for protection and and they hear what they hear. So when I ask, what did you hear me say? And somebody repeats, like I'm talking about the reticular activating system, or I'm talking about subconscious preverbal trauma, which is a feeling tone. What did you hear me say? And then they'll feed it back to me, and then I'll have clarity about how far we're off so I can bring us closer together, knowing never is it going to be this my picture. Never, ever. Can't be. It can't be my picture because they don't have my experience, which now is an addition to me,
Yep.
where before it was an affront to me. Oh, you don't listen, you don't care, you got your own way, all that stuff.
Right.
And another thing too is that my thoughts, my lens that I heard people say or saw people do was through the lens of the victim. So my thought was victim. So the perception I came up with about the interaction was from the victim perspective. And then that thought had that element. So and again, that's where the defensiveness came. And you said you would never do that again, and they may have said, I'll work on it. You said you never do that again. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. So yeah, this is really cool.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Yeah.
So there's another point I wanted to raise. And this is, I've said this on the podcast before, and it's just a theory of mine. I don't know that I can prove this, but my theory is that because our beginning as human beings in ages from birth to 4 or 5 years old is before we awaken to self-awareness.
Right.
So before we have thought, or at least conscious thought, we are essentially living in an emotional environment, and we respond to the stimuli in our environment emotionally. We don't respond rationally. So if I'm hungry, I just feel hungry. If I wet, if I got a boatload in my diaper, I just feel uncomfortable. If it's too hot in the room, I just feel too hot.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have needs that aren't being met, I might feel afraid or I might feel sad. So everything in those first 4 years, let's just say, is essentially an emotional reaction. And that's where that complex PTSD can form if there's enough trauma. That is to say, unresolved
Correct.
pain that hasn't been
Yeah.
allowed to just be taken care of and healed. So my theory is that all of our thinking, once the light of our mind turns on and thought begins, it will be determined by that configuration of emotional dynamics.
Correct.
That our emotional experience teaches us what we're going to think. So our thinking is already determined by the emotional experience of the first 4 years of our lives. It's not independent. It's completely formed by what's already gone on.
Yes.
And so, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. It's something to consider began at the very beginning of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Your perception of self in relationship to self and other people
Right.
was based on a feeling. And feeling is frequency. So the frequency of neglect, or the feeling I have when there's nobody around for a long period of time. And for an infant, it could be 5 minutes. That we don't long. So in distress for a long period of time. And then I think it was, I don't want to misname these doctors, but the doctor, Zeus or whoever he was, let the baby cry. And that crying, it had to self-regulate, which it couldn't, so it shut down. So it knew that if no matter how hard it asked for, and this is my perception, which is a feeling tone for the child, for the infant, it wasn't going to get its need met. So that influenced attachment style, attachment disorder,
Right.
all kinds of things we can get into about what that creates in the in the thought process, cognitive process, putting together rational reasons for why this is happening.
Right.
Yeah, so I actually, that's my, I want to say it's my credo that the formative years of a child determine its, I want to say, destiny if unattended.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what the intentional living and accountability tree does. It attends to that that perception created from childhood trauma and neglect and all kinds of ways, you know. And it could be somebody walking out of the room. It just could be your parent and they're disappeared. It's like our dogs. If I go out that door, I don't care if it's 5 seconds or 5 hours. When I open that door, they're all happy. It's like they just all they know is gone. That's all they, and that's I'm not saying but we're in that field. We're in that, I don't know, gone, and that could be
Well,
traumatizing.
and the
And
child has no idea of time.
no, no, oh,
Yeah.
that's a good point. There is no time in the child's
No.
experience. No time.
Right.
It's all happening right now.
Right.
So, yeah,
Well, it's we're coming to the end of our time together on this one. I just at the risk of opening another can of worms, I'd just like to note that all of the wisdom traditions, the spiritual traditions, say don't believe your thoughts.
yeah,
All of them,
all of them.
all of them say you can't think your way to God.
Correct.
So, and that's, I think, I don't know that that's a principle yet in our work, but it's certainly implied, which is that the access to the wisdom is through the body, and we do have several principles that trust the body, and you can't not feel, and several others that
Yeah.
we've already discussed.
Mhm.
And it's a real counterintuitive statement to say I can find wisdom of the truth, wisdom and the truth inside myself through my feeling body, not through my thoughts.
Correct.
And that's the intentional living process, the accountability tree that we've talked about many times on the podcast is based on
Mhm.
going to the feeling, being present with a feeling rather than the thought. And if we have a thought about it, do our best to sort of push it off to the side and stay with the feeling tone, the energy, the
You're right. That,
sensation.
that's a number 10 tin can of worms. That's a big can of worms. That's okay. We'll address that sometime in the
Yeah.
future. Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, I just for the newcomer, there are many podcasts that discuss this the question that um, the access to healing is through the feeling body. And
Yeah.
I've always said that not always because that's a lie, but I've come to believe that the mind is just the commentator. The feeling comes, and then the mind goes, "Oh, this is what's happening,"
Correct.
which may or may not be true.
Well, if you're connected to the feeling tone, which is what you were conditioned out of as a child, you
Exactly.
can't go in there because it's too dangerous. So yeah, very good.
And how many times when we're facilitating a meeting and helping a newcomer um, experience the process, and we say, what do you feel? And the person answers with a thought.
Correct.
I feel confused. Okay, that's more of a thought. How does confused feel?
Yeah.
And and it took me a long time. I'm not gonna make anybody wrong for that. That's what you were just saying is we were trained out of feeling or
Yeah.
we were trained away from feeling and we were trained toward more toward adrenaline and other substitute
Logic, rational reason.
sensations
Yeah.
as a way of avoiding that pain of the complex PTSD, abandonment, fear and terror, etc. So,
Exactly.
um,
Okay.
well, we've come to the end of our time together on this one. And John, this is the last of our principles. There's other things that we're going to share about this, but this is the last of our principles that we've been discussing for the last several months. I want to thank you for participating in this and helping those who are interested in learning more about these things get some insight into this. As I said at the top of the podcast, the best way that anybody watching can actually feel these things and have them experience of them is to come to a meeting. And since all of our meetings are on Zoom, we hope that we've made that easy for almost everybody to participate. And information about times, days, and Zoom room addresses is at the end of the podcast. So please feel free to join us. So before we wrap up, any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share?
I'm going to continue doing this. There's nothing I'd rather do than addressing and offering information about this cunning, baffling, powerful thing that keeps us away from ourselves.
All right. Can't say fairer than that.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Brother John. And thanks everybody for joining us. And we'll see you at the next one.
You got it. Thank you.